Hey there, fellow thrill seekers. Welcome to our channel, where we bring you the most spine-chilling home alone stories that'll make you think twice before staying home by yourself. If you dare to join our spooky community, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. But remember, once you're here, there's no turning back. So, let me tell you about what happened to me last year. I just started college and I was super excited, I moved into this old house that I was sharing with a few other students. The rent was cheap, and it was close to campus, so it was perfect. But it turns out that the house had this creepy old basement with a locked door. I didn't think much about it at first. Months went by, and everything was fine. But one night, I was doing laundry and I heard some strange noises coming from the area of the basement door. I thought maybe it was some mice or something, so I ignored it. Then probably a week or so later, I heard more sounds like scratching and knocking at the door. It was late, so I just thought maybe it was my imagination or something and went to bed. A few days after that, the noises got even worse. They happened every night like clockwork, and that freaked me out. I told my roommates about it, but none of them had ever heard those sounds, and they didn't believe me. They just teased me and called me crazy, but I knew there was something wrong. Something just felt off. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I just had to see what was behind that door, so I managed to find a hammer and a screwdriver, and I tried my best to pry the door open. It took a lot of effort, but eventually I managed to break the lock. I was nervous, my hands were sweating, and I was breathing hard. I took out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The moment I opened that door and looked in, man, I couldn't believe my eyes. There was an old dude inside, all chained up with a dirty mattress on the floor, and it looked like he hadn't seen any light for years. He looked scared, but also relieved that someone had found him. I freaked out, I didn't know what to do. I ran upstairs and called the cops. They came pretty quickly, but they couldn't quite believe the situation either. They went down there with me to talk with the guy, and they helped unchain him. They told us not to leave the house and that they would be back with a detective. While waiting for them, I started talking to this man. He told me that he'd been trapped down there by some weird supernatural creature that kept him there for some dark reason he couldn't understand. He said that every once in a while, that creature would come to visit and feed off him, making him weak and exhausted. He had never seen what the creature looked like because it would always be in the shadows and only approach when he was closing his eyes. He tried everything he could to escape, but it was impossible. He also told me that I should be careful because the creature would know I broke the lock and would come after me. Man, that made me so scared, but I had to admit that it explained the noises and the bad feelings I had. I couldn't sleep a wink that night. I kept thinking about the creature, and I decided I had to do something to protect myself and my roommates. I told them about everything, but they just laughed and told me they didn't believe in that stuff. But I knew it was true. I did a whole bunch of research, trying to find anything I could on supernatural creatures like this. Finally, I found a book at the library that talked about a ritual that could protect a house and banish a dark spirit. It involved sprinkling salt and burning sage around the house, reciting some words, and doing this all at midnight when the creature was believed to be the strongest. I figured it was worth a try. So, the next night, right at midnight, I started the ritual. My roommates thought I was stupid, but I invited them to join me anyway, and they did, probably just for a laugh. We did everything according to the book, and honestly, it felt really creepy and tense. But as soon as we finished, I felt a weird sense of relief, like the air in the house had somehow changed. A couple of days later, the detective and some cops came back to our house. They checked out everything and questioned us all. The guy who'd been locked up was all cleaned up now, and he told them his story. They didn't know what to do about it, honestly. They said they'd look into it and keep an eye on the house, but there were no indications that the supernatural could be involved. But after we did that ritual, none of us ever heard any noises from the basement again, and nothing strange ever happened. It was like everything was normal. So, call me crazy, but I think that weird supernatural creature was real, and we managed to defeat it and protect our house. Everyone who lived there with me knows deep down that what I'm saying is true, but they just don't want to talk about it. So, that's my story. It's not something I usually tell people because it's so crazy. But if you're really looking for a scary story, I figured you might like to hear it. And who knows, maybe somebody else out there has got a story like mine. Right, so let me tell you about this wild experience I had a while back. My distant aunt, with whom I was never really close, passed away, and I unexpectedly found out that she left me this huge old mansion situated in the middle of nowhere. Here, I was pretty puzzled, because I barely even knew her, but I was curious to see the property and find out whether it had any value. When I arrived at the place, it was clear the house was ancient and badly in need of repairs, but it had this amazing library full of antique books that caught my eye. As I rummaged through the collection, I came across an old dollhouse, and it looked just like the mansion I was in, only smaller. What's more, the dolls inside appeared to be moving on their own. It creeped me out, but thinking it was just my imagination, I decided not to make a fuss about it. However, after spending more time in the mansion, I began to notice strange things happening whenever I moved the dolls around in the dollhouse. It appeared that any event that took place within the dollhouse would also happen within the mansion. At first, the occurrences were subtle, like objects being rearranged and doors opening, but after a while, the incidents began to escalate dramatically in intensity. One day, when I accidentally shifted one of the dolls, an enormous chandelier came crashing down from the ceiling, almost crushing me beneath it. The incident left me shaken, and I couldn't shake the idea that somehow my late aunt's spirit was tormenting me for not visiting her when she was alive. As far-fetched as it seemed, I couldn't think of any other explanation. Determined to understand the mysterious occurrences with the dolls and the eerie goings-on in the mansion, I delved deeper into my aunt's library in search of clues. Hidden within a dusty old tome, I discovered a photo of my aunt, which also featured a sinister-looking man. Apparently, this man had been highly involved in dark magic, and my aunt had been his willing apprentice. To my horror, I learned that the dolls harbored the trapped spirits of the people this evil man had killed. These spirits were now controlling events within the mansion via the dollhouse. Fearful for my safety, I became desperate to find a way to rid myself and the house of these malevolent spirits. Attempting various methods such as prayers, burning sage, and even drawing a protective circle around the dollhouse, I found none of them were effective. Ultimately, I decided the only viable solution was to destroy the dollhouse itself. Although it was risky, I couldn't go on living in constant danger. One day, with determination in my heart, I took the dollhouse from the library and carried it out to the yard. I stacked it on a pile of wood, doused everything with gasoline, and did not hesitate to light a match and set the entire structure ablaze. As the fire consumed the dollhouse, I could hear the tormented screams of the trapped dolls and the sound of wood cracking under the heat. The fire eventually reduced the dollhouse to ash and smoke, and as the last embers faded away, I was flooded with an incredible sense of relief, as if I'd just escaped from the grasp of a malevolent presence. Miraculously, I found myself freed from the grip of these evil spirits, and the mansion, though still filled with eerie echoes of its past, became a place I could reside in without living in terror. That's my story. Many people express doubt or incredulity when I tell them, but I swear it's all true. I even hold on to some photographs of the mansion and the dollhouse, serving as a constant reminder that this ordeal was real. And who knows, maybe someone else out there has experienced something just as bizarre and inexplicable. So I gotta tell you this story that happened to me last year. I moved into this beautiful little cottage in the countryside, like a dream come true, I thought. The place was surrounded by trees, and there was even a small pond nearby. At first, everything was just perfect. But then, a couple of months after I moved in, I started hearing these awful screams every night at exactly midnight. I swear it was the most terrifying noise I'd ever heard, like someone in terrible pain and so scared. It sent shivers down my spine, but I didn't know what to do about it at first. I asked my neighbors if they'd ever heard anything like it, but they all said they hadn't. They looked at me like I must be crazy, but I knew there was something going on, and I had to find out what it was. I decided to head over to the local library to see if I could dig up any history about my house or the area. I spent days going through old newspapers, maps, and even town records, looking for any clue. Finally, I came across a story about a young woman who had lived in my cottage like 100 years ago. The woman had gone missing, and her body was never found. The more I read about this woman, the more I felt like her story was connected to the midnight screams I was hearing. It was so bizarre, I knew it had to be connected somehow. I also came across an ad in one of the old newspapers for a psychic medium. Desperate for answers, I figured I had nothing to lose, so I called her up and asked her to come to the house and help me figure out what was happening. When the psychic arrived at my cottage, she seemed to feel what I had been feeling right away. She confirmed my suspicions that there was a lot of weird energy in the house, especially at night. She suggested we try a seance to communicate with the spirit and try to help them find peace. We sat down at my dining table, lit some candles, and held hands, forming a circle. The psychic started asking questions, trying to address the spirit, and then something amazing happened. We made contact with the trapped spirit of the woman who went missing. She kept repeating that she was stuck and that the time loop she was trapped in was the cause of the midnight screams. The psychic explained that we needed to break the time loop to free the trapped spirit and put an end to her suffering. She guided me through a special ritual that involved burning sage and reciting specific phrases designed to release spirits from their earthly bonds. We decided that the best time to perform the ritual was during the midnight screams, so that the trapped spirit would be more receptive. When midnight came, with the screams echoing through the house, we began our ritual. At first, it seemed like nothing was happening. But then, as we finished, the screaming suddenly stopped. The psychic told me that she had a vision of the trapped spirit finally being able to move on, freed from the time loop that had been causing her so much pain. We had done it. We had put an end to her torment. Since then, I haven't heard the midnight screams again. The house has become peaceful and quiet, just the way I wanted it when I first moved in. I still think about the spirit of that woman sometimes, but I'm grateful that I was able to help her finally find rest. So, that's my story. People might not believe me when I tell them what happened, but I know it's all true. If you're looking for something really scary and hard to explain, my story might be just the thing you've been searching for. And who knows? Maybe other people out there have experienced something just as creepy and peculiar. Chilling tale. Since we're still exploring this format, your feedback means a lot. Help us improve by liking, subscribing, and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Let us know what worked for you and what didn't, or suggest ideas for future spine-tingling stories. Don't forget to vote for the comments that resonate with you the most. We craft our hair, raising tales based on your requests. After all,